Okay, now we're dealing with imaginary numbers, and the square root of -1 is an imaginary number. It's not real. So we call it I, and I squared equals, if you square that, you lift the radical, you get -1. I cubed equals I squared, which is -1 times I, which is -1 times I is -I. And I to the fourth equals -1 times -1, which is 1. Now, we could keep going, but here's the point. In fact, why don't I keep going? I to the fifth equals 1 times I is I to the sixth equals I to the fourth, which is 1 times I squared, which is -1, so that's going to be -1. I to the seventh equals -1 times I, which is -I. And I to the eighth equals 1. So here's the rule. If the exponent is even, your options are -1 or +1. If the exponent is odd, your options are -I or I. So let's try that in a chart. Let's see. Exponent. Even. Odd. Only options are -1 or 1, -I or I. It's -1 if the exponent even not a multiple of 4. Get a 1 if a multiple of 4. Odd if 1 more than a multiple of 4. More than m of 4. And excuse me, if not, excuse me, 1 more than one more than not a multiple of 4. 1 more than a m of 4. So, those are the rules. Now we're going to stop and we're going to do questions 2 and 3. So, you might find this confusing, but hang in there. I to the 35th. Is 35 odd or even? Well, 35 is odd, so we know we're going to have an I here. Then the next question is 35 1 more than a multiple of 4? Well, 34 is the number before 35, and 34 is not a multiple of 4. Then this is going to be -I. Okay? Let's try I to the 44th. I to the 44th is 44 is a multiple of, it's even, so we're going to get a 1, and it's a multiple of 4, so that's it. We're done. Practice that. Now we'll do number 1. and that's 2 minus 5i over 4i. And our objective is get rid of the I in the denominator. So we'll multiply by whatever will make that an integer. And if I multiply by I, by 1 in the form of I over I, what we get is I times 2 minus 5i over, and I times I is 4i squared, but I squared is negative 1, so that's negative 4. And now we have 2i minus 5i squared, which equals, and I'm going to get rid of this negative. Well, no, let's leave it alone. I'm going to have 2i over negative 4 and minus a minus, so that's going to be a plus 5i squared over 4. The negatives divide out, but that equals I squared's negative 1, so that's going to be negative 5 over 4. And 2 goes into 4 twice, so that's going to be minus 1/2 I. And we are done. And notice you have to write it in the form a plus bi, where the real part's first, the imaginary part's second, and you have two separate terms. So we have our a plus bi, real part first, imaginary part second, two separate terms, and we're done.